Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another session of RTI University and our talk shows, specifically where we're addressing AI, the implications of AI, and the whole thing is, are we going to be left behind with AI, or we're actually going to leapfrog ahead? Today, we're joined by a very special guest, Mr. Rob Jardine, who is the learning lead for Oliver Wyman in the Middle East, India, and Africa. Rob manages colleague-to-colleague office learning around the globe for the business of more than 6,000 management consultants. He's a registered industrial psychologist with consulting experience, having lived in Germany and in Spain and multiple other countries. He's currently based in Dubai and working on clients such as Microsoft, Adidas, Meta. Rob is a regular conference speaker. He's been on this talk show in the past and is a well-known thought leader in media at business schools on topics such as AI, behavioral science, learning and development. Best of all, Rob is also a former tabler and member of Roundtable Golden East 181 in South Africa, as well as Sainton 121 in South Africa, and he recently moved to Dubai. Today's session is going to be very interactive. So when I hand over to Rob, he's going to share with you how anyone following along can actually help us interact. Please do this, and then also on Facebook, if you are following along, feel free to post some questions, which we will address afterwards. So, right, to share some insights with regards to AI, not only how it affects us now, but also in the future. Please, Mr. Rob Jardine.
Thank you very much, Graham. It's an absolute pleasure to connect with you and the Roundtable community and really, help create this platform of learning for everyone. As you mentioned, we are going to be using technology in a different way in today's conversation. And I'd love you to use your phone to connect for those that are dialing in either via Facebook or via their cell phones as well. You can use your cell phone just by scanning the QR codes on the screen there and give us a thumbs up or select the thumbs up button once you have selected it. You'll also be able to go to menti.com and enter in the code 87214017. I know there's a bit of a delay on the call coming from Facebook Live as well. So what I will be doing is adding the QR code at different times to help people engage in today's conversation. A quick reminder about Menti is that it is completely anonymous and confidential. It does have a profanity filter, which means that it does censor swear words, but as I've learned in my prior table experience, it doesn't censor swear words in every language as well. So use that information as you will. With that being said, this software is going to help us engage in today's presentation. The presentation will be on your phones and you'll be able to engage with it at all times. To kick us off right off the bat, I want to talk about how AI makes us feel. Maybe it's just me as a psychologist, just kind of thinking out loud here. As psychologists, we always get into our feelings, but it's always important to reflect on how does AI make us feel? Are we just feeling old? Are we feeling scared? Are we feeling excited? Or are we feeling a combination of all of them at the same time? Because a big barrier to successful AI adoption is the feeling that it invokes with us, a feeling of fear, a feeling of both the opportunity to leapfrog current society, but also that fear of being left behind. And this is something that I really reflected on quite a bit when I came into today's presentation, because when I first reflected on AI and its adoption, I really felt like this. I felt like an old man or a 41er, pardon the pun there, trying to use a mobile phone. That's how I felt for a large time using AI, is that I felt like an old person trying to use a modern piece of technology, and I felt overwhelmed. And that's what I found with a lot of colleagues and a lot of business leaders I've been working with around the world at the moment with regards to AI. A lot of it feels like too much, and we don't know what to do. We know it's important, but we do run the risk of being left behind because there's so many opportunities to take advantage of AI in the future. And we want to sit with those emotions and create a space where we're actually able not to be left behind, but able to leapfrog into the future that AI brings for us. Funnily enough, if you look carefully at this picture, there's one or two oddities about this picture. Graham, I might pull in your voice because I can see you on the screen here, just to reflect on what stands out in that picture. Does anything stand out for you there? Anything look odd?
Firstly, I think the phone is flipped the wrong way around, so that definitely stands out to myself. Then also you've got an elderly person being very scared and afraid of technology and what the future might bring.
Definitely, Graham. And it's actually that flipped around picture, because that's actually what I've done in today's presentation is I've created it entirely using AI. And that's almost a cautionary tale to show you that AI isn't there just yet to take over our jobs, but it is a tool that's still developing. So when I asked it to make a picture of an old person feeling overwhelmed using a phone, you could see the phone there is a bit back to front. But what I do want to show you is just one application of it that we use here at Oliver Wyman in our internal systems, is that we've built our own AI internally. And what that's really helped with, which is kind of the story of today's kind of golden thread, is that AI is becoming a lot easier to use for non-tech people. And let me show you what I mean by that. When I created that picture, I created it at 10:43 a.m. my side, and I typed in just one sentence that you'll see there. Create an image of an old person using a cell phone and feeling confused. What our version of that AI did was it took that and wrote it into a much more detailed prompt. An elderly individual with wrinkled skin and white hair sitting in a well-lit room, etc., etc., etc. So by taking a few words of my prompt, it made it a lot more detailed and created an image. And that for me, I think is a very good example of the indicative and compounding effect that AI is having in our lives. You don't have to be a prompt engineer or understand how to use AI to use AI. AI is becoming a lot more tech accessible. So AI is helping AI work better. We don't have to be really good at writing prompts. We can write very simple ones, and AI will take it further for us to make the product. And that's really what I want to talk about today, and invite any questions or comments as we carry on around what does AI really mean for us? Are we able to use it to leapfrog the incoming change, or are we feeling left behind? What I will do is I'll leave the QR code as well on the screen, and Graham, please shout at me if there's any comments or questions along the way. But what I'd like to tee up is our three big ideas of our engagement today. I'd like to talk about three big ideas and show some examples around what are some of the trends that we're seeing in AI, what's the impact that we see it having for us, and what can we do, especially as tablers moving into the future. And the very first thing I want to start off with is a very famous quote by Alvin Toffler, who is a famous 21st century science fiction writer. And he wrote this a number of years ago. He said, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." And I must say, when I read this for the first time, it made me reflect a lot on the motto of Roundtable. And for those that are dialed in, I'm sure we can see a few examples coming through now. But the Roundtable motto, which is almost entering its 100th year in the next few years, is really about adopt, adapt, and improve. And that, for me, as the motto of Roundtable, and speaking to Alvin Toffler of future-proofing our careers, is the reason why Roundtable has been around for so long, and also underscores the important need for all of us to be able to focus on how are we unlearning, relearning, and learning differently as we move into the future. Because right now, that's exactly what is being asked of us as well. How do we adopt, adapt, and improve with the usage of AI? And there's a few examples that speak to that. I didn't want to go too much into the examples in this call because I think there's a lot of different calls where you can find a lot of stats. But I thought just some of the more important ones for me in 2024 were really interesting. The first is generative AI is becoming easier to use for non-tech capabilities. So you don't have to understand financial modeling to use a financial model. You don't have to understand imagery to generate cool pictures and images and prompting. AI is building a compounding interest portfolio where it's becoming easier for non-tech people to use, which is increasing its usage and adoption rate. Some studies predict that AI adoption is thus, as a result, going to see an annual growth rate of 37% from 2023 to 2030. And as a result, the global AI market size is expected to be worth over $400 billion by 2027. I've put an image of Google there because what I've actually seen most recently in the last week, I think Google announced $100 billion investment just into AI. Companies are seeing the potential and they're putting their money where their mouths are and where they're thinking. But I'd like to take a pause here and just maybe hear from the audience, where are you seeing the effects of AI in the workplace or in your social life or in your education, your family, or with your children? Where are you seeing the effects of AI? I'll also check the comments and I'll check on my side if anything comes up. I'll leave people a few moments to share. People talk about report writing and basic research at work. I've definitely seen it. I've used a lot of it for myself as well, and I see a lot of people doing that. Interestingly enough, when you talk about report writing and research, I attended a conference last year where people were testing the accuracy of some of those reports, and they asked a Gen AI software, ChatGPT, to add references to its arguments that it was making, and those references were completely made up. There's actually a term, I think it's called a AI hallucination. So even though it's good at writing reports, sometimes the facts and the accuracy don't always add up as well. So another cautionary tale. Facebook and Instagram, we definitely see a lot of that with regards to predictive algorithms. What I've actually started doing is, funnily enough, internally, we work on a lot of communication that has to be done on MS Teams channels and Slack, and we write it in a social media format as well. And I've seen people, or I've used it myself. I've written out formal emails into ChatGPT, and I've said to them, make it in a social media format, and it adds a whole bunch of emojis and makes things quite synced for me as well. Makes me feel quite Gen Z. So there's lots of effects that come out with regards to AI. It's affecting how we work, who we work with. But I wanted to share maybe just two examples that may or may not come across your table and where you work. The first of all is AI in cricket. And I know
Let's talk about one of the hottest prospects.
I know there's quite a few fans of cricket in table, particularly from the subcontinent. But this video was shared with me from a friend who works at the ICC here in Dubai. And here's an example of a live broadcast being switched from English to Hindi using generative AI in a cricket broadcast.
Let's talk about one of the hottest prospects in world cricket right now. भारत और राजस्थान के ओपनिंग बल्लेबाज यशस्वी जायसवाल मेरी फॉर्मर टीममेट एक गजब के यंग खिलाड़ी हैं और उनके खेलने का अंदाज मुझे बहुत पसंद है बहुत ही अग्रेसिव हैं उन्हें बिल्कुल फर्क नहीं पड़ता कि कौन उन्हें बॉलिंग करा रहा है बॉलर्स को प्रेशर में डाल देते हैं रीसेंट टेस्ट सीरीज इंग्लैंड में ही देखा हमने उन्होंने जिमी एंडरसन जैसे ग्रेट बॉलर के कैसे छक्के छुड़ा दिए थे एंडरसन के सर के ऊपर से गेंद जा रही थी हर जगह मार खा रहे थे और यशस्वी ऐसे ही बल्लेबाज है बॉलर्स को भयानक प्रेशर में डाल के शुरू से ही जायसवाल बॉल को एग्रेसिवली मार देते हैं उनका हैंड आई कोऑर्डिनेशन दुनिया में वन ऑफ द बेस्ट है अभी के समय में स्पिन के खिलाफ भी क्रीज के पीछे होके अपने आप को हल्का रूम दे के मिड विकेट के ऊपर बढ़िया पुल मारते हैं या आगे बढ़कर वो स्पिन गेंदबाजों के सर के ऊपर से बॉल उड़ा देते हैं गजब के खिलाड़ी है भाई यशस्वी और सरप्राइजिंग नहीं होगा अगर इस सीजन उन्हें ऑरेंज कैप मिले तो
So I don't know enough about Hindi to tell you if that was accurate enough, but my colleagues that do speak Hindi have told me that's a very good dialogue that was dubbed over there as well. That's just one part out of ChatGPT and social media where we see AI influencing the possibilities to reach broader audiences. And I think about, table it being in different parts of the world, speaking different languages, what might be possible with language translation as just one aspect of it. Another aspect also talks to our entertainment that people have been seeing most lately with Sam Altman and the CEO of ChatGPT and OpenAI recently talking about what they're doing in the movie space and in the technology space there as well with regard to entertainment. And I thought this video really speaks to an interesting aspect around text prompted film. So some more great examples there from the future of entertainment. And I think it's really exemplified by Sam Altman when he said this just a few weeks ago, that movies are going to become video games and video games are going to become something unimaginably better. So AI is not only affecting us in being more efficient, more productive, giving us targeted ads on Facebook and on social media. It's also changing how we're entertained and creativity. And with that comes a lot of threats as well, with regards to things such as ethics, with regards to deep fakes and misinformation. And what I'd like to do now, before we go into probably the heart of today's conversation, which is around, so what can we do about it? Let me just pause to see, Graham, if there's been any comments or any questions from your side or any reflections maybe on what we've shown so far.
Rob, thank you very much. My first thing is that live cricket with the translation to Hindi that you showed me. The first thing that actually opens or that clicked in my mind was that for something like on Roundtable International, when we live broadcast an AGM, as we all know, it's in English. But I mean,
Sure.
Imagine if we can actually take this and put this to Hindi, to French, to German. So it actually makes what's being presented much more accessible to everyone. I think that just from a tabling perspective is immense. But then I'm also thinking from a business perspective, I mean, this just opens up so many doors because for all of humanity up to now, language has been a very big barrier to do business, where suddenly now, especially if this translation is very accurate, and you can get stuff or items such as tone correct. I mean, it really opens up a lot of doors in business as well.
I couldn't agree more. And the other thing that really comes to mind based on what you've shared there is also the role of secretary in roundtable meetings. And I must admit, when it comes to roundtable meetings and working in a few portfolios myself, secretary was always the role that I managed to duck and dive and avoid being during my tabling career, because I saw it as quite a hack, writing meeting minutes and meeting notes. And that's one thing I've been experimenting with in my personal capacity at work, is using meeting transcripts to write meeting notes. And you'll be really amazed at what it can do. And what we're actually doing on today's call, gents that are dialed in, is that we're actually recording the minutes of today's call, and we'll be sharing a meeting transcript afterwards, which will be a great summary of today. And you'll notice also in Zoom, as an example, you don't even have to use ChatGPT. It actually does it internally for you as part of that. And it makes me think, how is the role of secretary going to change in the future, especially with regard to roundtable meetings?
Rob, maybe just another question on my side. This AI generated video from text that you just showed, is
Sure.
there not a lot of opportunity or gap there for misuse? People actually spreading a lot of misinformation. I know you were starting to allude into ethics and stuff, but I'm just thinking for someone who's not aware that something is an AI creation, it could really confuse a lot of people, because even with the speech and the hyperrealism that you get nowadays, and I mean, this is still really at the birth of AI. Imagine this 5 or 10 years from now, how would people actually be able to arm themselves to know what is real and what is not?
It's a really great question, Graham, and it actually speaks to a growing industry that's emerging in AI, which is almost, I don't know if it's called anti-AI, but I call it anti-AI industry, where it is software to police AI, to determine what is a deep fake. It emerged last year when people were starting to use ChatGPT to write university essays. So they developed much more sophisticated software that would not only check for plagiarism, but essentially check if a human wrote this essay or this email. Now they're developing more software to check, is this video really Barack Obama saying what he said? If you look at the very first video in that video that we saw, it was a video made in the golden age of the gold rush in the Americas, right, in the Wild West. But people can really spread misinformation because they can suddenly show the gold rush, but start show, I don't know, something political like Native Americans or genocide, or can doctor images, and those doctored images can spread like wildfire. So I know as there's more computer power put towards creating artificially created imagery and texts, there's also policing software that's being created. And just one example that I'll underline there, just Graham, is the ongoing conflict in the Middle East and the conflict in Ukraine being called the first social media wars that have happened during the social media era. There's a lot of images and videos that are being sent around saying this side did that, this is genocide, this is that, whatever the story is. But there's a big need to proof check and fact check those images, but it's so easy to create misinformation, and that can even be weaponized in things like war at a more extreme level as well. So with all the promise and the ability to leapfrog, there's also a cautionary tale, as you've shared, that misinformation can be used to other people's detriment as well. But when we talk about what we can do about it as tablers, right? I mean, there's really one thing that comes to mind, and that's for me is to accept the inevitable. This, by the way, on the slide is a reference to an earlier film. Those Gen Zs on the call here today, Graham, I don't want to give away your age, but I'm pretty sure you know the reference to this film and to the character, right? Accept the inevitable.
I must admit, I think anyone over the age of 30 would definitely, or would immediately be able to recognize Neo over here.
Perfect. And that obviously comes from Agent Smith talking to Neo in the film where he says, I am inevitable, right? AI is coming, AI is here, AI is always going to be here. We as tablers need to accept that it's here, stop treating it like that old person trying to figure out the smartphone. But there are strategies we can start to use inspired by business leaders that can help us adapt it and not feel left behind. And that's really what I want to end on today as our final piece is, how can we find the fun with regards to an adaptation of AI? Because AI can feel like this big, scary thing that only engineers know how to use. I don't even know how to properly manage my Outlook, let alone use ChatGPT. So how can I use this thing? So I'm just going to stay away from it. But if we adopt that mindset, we can be left behind and not leverage the opportunities that are presented to us. So what I'd like to leave you with is an inspiring story around getting better at anything that you care about and ways that we can do it in Table. Now, I'm not going to show this video that we have on the screen here at the moment because it's a 12-minute video, but I will share it in the chat afterwards and you can have a look. But I'll leave it here for a second so everyone can see the title of this clip. It's from Eduardo Pacheno, and it's called How to Get Better at Things That You Care About. And it's a really inspiring TED Talk because he talks about the difference between a learning zone and a performance zone. He tells the story of a famous Roman lawyer. You'll see him depicted there in the picture. And this lawyer, millennia ago, he decided, well, I want to be good at becoming a lawyer. But the court of the time was in the central town square. And he thought, how do I get better at speaking over people and commanding an audience in a loud and noisy environment? So he decided, rather than trying to practice in the courtroom when everything is loud and noisy, he thought, let me go to the ocean and practice speaking over the roaring sounds of the ocean with rocks in my mouth so I get better at pronouncing words. Kind of a crude tale, but the story is so important. If we want to get better at things that we care about, we need to create low-stakes situations where we can make mistakes, focus on practice and progress. And he exemplifies this from a duality that he calls the learning zone versus the performance zone. And it's often said that we have these two zones in life. In the performance zone on the right, if I start there, the goal is to do as best as we can. Our activities are for execution. We want to focus on what we've mastered. We expect very minimal mistakes, and we always want to focus on immediate performance. That's basically our day jobs. That's what we do every day. It's why we get paid. It's our livelihoods. But if we're going to leapfrog and take advantage of AI, we need to shift out of the performance zone into the learning zone, where the goal is to focus on improvement. We're focusing on skills we haven't mastered, like AI, and mistakes are expected. They're not minimized because the benefit is focused on growth and future performance. The real analogy here is that when we're trying something for the first time, it can feel like you're balancing over a sea of sharks, right? Because you're in the performance zone. But if we want to move to the learning zone, we have to create a safety net under that sea of sharks. We have to have fun with the new skill that we're trying to do. And that's even what I've been trying to do today. And that's personally in my own story with Table, how Table has really fitted into my life. Is Table has always been that space outside of work where we can make mistakes. We're a brotherhood working for a higher cause, and we can be experimental and we can do things in different ways because it's fun and we care about each other. And that's really where AI can be. And what I kind of want to leave everyone with here today is saying, don't only bring AI into your lives, but use Table as the opportunity to bring AI into your life in a way that's fun, in a way that's dynamic, where you can practice and make things better overall. And here are just 3 examples, and I'd love to hear some examples from the audience or from Graham or from other people around how you can experiment with AI and Table. Things that I've seen work quite effectively is having a ChatGPT joke competition in the next meeting agenda. So in some tables, depending where you are in the world, people like to have the best joke of the evening, but try and get ChatGPT to write a joke and people to rate that joke and see where it is. Another interesting thing that I mentioned about that Zoom transcripts to run a meeting analysis based on what the talking points of the meeting were, what the next steps were. You can even analyze a Zoom transcript to say who spoke the most. I know there's often sergeants' fines and different things that are handed out for the people that talk the most. Why not ask AI to actually credibly give you the percentage that they spoke compared to the others? And then another fun experiment I've just been playing with myself here is saying, who can make the best image to represent table with AI? That's a really fun experiment. We used it a lot in the working world in the context, but it gets people feeling familiar and comfortable in a low stakes situation. You're not using AI to make your job X% more productive so you can keep your job. You're using AI in a safe place to have fun. And that's really where table can be. What I'd like to move what I'd like to move to now, Graham, as we get to the end of this conversation, and I open up for any questions from the audience, is I'd like to show you an example of what I did earlier today when I asked an AI tool to create an image of what Roundtable would look like. What I did earlier this morning is I plugged in the Roundtable International website into this AI tool, and I said, create an image of what a member of Roundtable looks like using info from the website. And as you can see there, two males having a meeting around a table. It seems to be quite round, if I don't say so myself. And there's the insignia, quite interestingly, and the words adopt, adapt, and improve put on the wall as well. I thought that was pretty good and pretty inspiring. And I thought that was kind of a nice way with AI is blended into table. But I thought as a final slide, let's take it one step further. And I said, can you show another version of the same image, but display how this club could look like in the future? I know it's something as we approach the 100-year anniversary in the next few years of Table, a lot of people with questions around membership and relevance and different topics to stay present for the next 100 years, we need to start asking ourselves these questions. And here's an example of what one AI tool saw Roundtable to be in the future. Very futuristic, probably in a space station somewhere in the world, but a very different set of people around the table. And that's really what I wanted to leave everyone here with today, is a thought around the future. How often are you using AI? Because it does have the possibility to leapfrog us into the future. Companies and people are investing billions of dollars to do so. And Roundtable is a really great platform for anyone, if they're not using AI in their own businesses, to experiment and have fun with it within the context of Roundtable, to ensure that they are not left behind, but they too can leapfrog into the future. So, Graham, we've reached our kind of 30-minute planned mark for our presentation today. I'd like to pause maybe just to check from you. Do you have any comments or questions that have come up on your side personally, or is there anything from the audience?
Right, from Facebook side, Rob, we've got one or two comments. Luigi is saying that he's currently in the learning zone, and he's also mentoring daily from what he learns in this zone to his colleagues and his friends. And then Bram Rosenstraten, I know past AMI chairman and actually a very good friend, he mentioned that after updating WhatsApp yesterday, that there's currently Meta AI added as a button, which opens up a chat GPT lookalike kind of chat, which is actually a lot of fun, and that he's experimenting with at this stage.
That's really great, and I enjoy Bram a lot. I have a lot of time for him, and I've only read an article about that. I haven't used it yet, but that's really fun and a really cool thing to play with. Colloquially, I've actually seen a friend of mine, whenever we have a few drinks or we get around and we at a pub or playing with a game, he'll often bring out Chat GPT and just create quizzes or games just on his cell phone. And we've had the most fun just playing with technology like that as well. So it's amazing that it's, I can't wait to cause some havoc on WhatsApp with that kind of tool and that kind of fun as well. That sounds great.
Right. Then Rob, I do have a question too. Where do we see AI and similar technologies going next? We've now seen the text to videos, we've seen the live translation, and ChatGPT. Where do you see it going next?
Oh, it's an interesting question and multifaceted. I think one thing that always stands out for me is what I'm seeing a lot of news around is the redefinition of what an artist is or what creativity is, and then the rights to creativity. You've seen now the ability to use a large language model and people's voices, where you can actually train a computer or a machine to use the voice of Eminem or of U2. I think actually there was a famous band that actually sold their rights to their voice to Sony, and now they can start making new music, but using their voices. So it really creates an interesting conversation around what is intellectual property, what are the rights of an artist, what are the rights of graphic designers. There was even a movie published just last week that was under fire for using an AI-generated image instead of using a graphic designer's image. And they said that's stealing people's jobs. So I think the creative industry is going to have a big headwind at the moment with regards to intellectual property, making money, and people losing their jobs. And then I think the other side is around the politics side, misinformation, deep fakes, social media, with, to be honest, didn't need a lot to be for people to be tricked on social media. Now, the kind of content we can create is very hard to determine if it's real or not. So misinformation affecting politics and international conflicts. And then maybe in a longer term, education, I think, is a really interesting space around. So at university, you were used to doing a test or an essay, or you were used to parrot learning. I did law and economics at university, a lot of memorization. Now you doing less of that. So what does that look like in the future? In the same way that, you know, I think before the calculator was invented, we didn't use the calculator in exams. Now we use the calculator in exams. Will you be allowed to take ChatGPT into your exam in the future? Right?
Okay.
Question to think about.
Right. Then we've got one question from Sebastian Antoni, and he's asking, can AI help us develop roundtable, for example, like chartering of new clubs?
Definitely.
Yeah.
There's actually something I've seen recently. So chartering of new clubs is interesting because there's chartering with regard to choosing a demographic, a setup, but just from the basics of getting the standard operating procedures in place, ChatGPT has a lot of usage there. So just one thing that I've seen is there is a executive education company that publishes a big journal, and they sell subscriptions to this journal. I've recently seen them transform it, saying, why do we need to sell you this article, this transcription? If we just train this chatbot to be really intelligent on our stuff, all we do is give you access to the chatbot. So imagine, as an example, have your constitutional advisor in Roundtable versus a chatbot, right? And I created some stuff today by just taking the stuff that I found on the RTI website and teaching an AI model about it and asking it questions. So imagine, as an example, if we uploaded, right, from a Google Drive or a Dropbox onto a large language model, all the documents, the standard operating procedures, all the portfolios, the constitution, how to charter some examples, and then we literally ask that chatbot, here's the context, we've got this many members, we need to do this, what should next steps be? And let that AI process help you. At the end of the day, it's not more smarter than you, you're just training it. It's just making things efficient and easy. And we know in a service club, we all have our day jobs, and this is done on top of that. We don't have a lot of time, but it's going to maximize the time we can spend building fellowship, and all the bureaucracy and the red tape that can sometimes detract from table, and sometimes our effectiveness and our speed can be really sped up. So I really see a great application of uploading like our constitutions, our standard operating procedures in a way it's going to help build capacity for us.
Okay. Rob, another question that I have here, and this is from a parent's point of view. How must the education, or what can we do as parents to actually educate our children, or what must we do differently with our children to actually help them, to have them be equipped to actually thrive in the world of tomorrow? Because as you mentioned earlier, there's this learn, unlearn, relearn. Is that basically the main thing, or how can we actually equip the children? Yeah, how can we actually equip our children to actually make a success of this ever-changing world that we're going into?
It's a great question, and my advice to that would be use it yourself. For a lot of us, we can see anything linked to technology as something for the younger generation that is maybe out of touch and not needed. We have to start using it ourselves because it is affecting our day jobs, our work. And this is not just like a fad for the generation like Pokemon or a series or whatever it is. This is fundamentally probably the biggest change in the last 50 years we've experienced for society, politics, how we form our personalities, education, everything fundamentally is going to change. So the best way to do it is to start using it ourselves and use it in fun contexts. Use it when you're chatting with friends, use it when to familiarize yourself and start getting your toes wet in the water, should I say. There are other courses and things you can look up for, but I would use it together with your families and with your children.
Robert, this then extend to business as well, because as you just mentioned, it's the biggest shakeup that we've seen in society and in the globe, probably in the last 50 years. I mean, obviously, you can't leave this behind as a business. Is it that, as you mentioned earlier, it's inevitable, we just need to embrace and run with it? Yeah, would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, and I would say this is a core leadership skill. It's not a technology skill. That's when many companies struggle with this. So they're like, okay, well, I've got an IT guy. He'll stay on top of this for me, right? This is a core leadership skill. And you don't have to know how it works. You don't have to be a coder or a programmer, but you have to start talking about it as a leader, encouraging experimentation, and being open to unlearning and relearning. So I think one of the biggest mistakes in the business world and one of the framings I would give is that this is not something for your IT department to worry about. It's something for you to worry about as another core leadership skill.
We just got a new question in from Krista from Rotterdam, Estonia, and he asked about what do you think about using AI in the legal field, specifically referencing to writing constitutional documents, solving some legal cases, etc.
I think it has very big promise. I stopped studying law after my first year, and I went down the track to become an organizational psychologist. So law is always close to my heart in my early studies in my undergrad. But one thing I have seen, there's one company that I think they give you something like $1 million if you take a legal case to them, you put it on the website, and if a lawyer can beat the advice that the website gives you through a ChatGPT model, they'll give you $1 million. That's been going for a few years now. And I think the legal field is one of the fields that'll be the most disrupted. A lot of it is obviously human judgment and precedent, but whenever there's large volumes of information and needing to be synthesized, ChatGPT has a big advantage there. With that being said, it just is going to help the human decide better. It shouldn't replace the human. And that's one thing I do want to give a caveat to, because it's not 100% accurate. And we even know that when humans in the legal field make mistakes, there's a lot of cases where people are wrongfully imprisoned or convicted as well. So I think it's a big enabler. It won't replace people completely, but it's one of the lowest hanging fruits in the disruption market in the workplace.
Yeah. Another comment that we just had in here on Facebook, and I see it's actually starting to pick up some traction now. It's again from Luigi, saying that he believes that we need to focus on training kids on critical thinking as well. Basically, any question can be answered by AI. But I mean, yeah, we need to actually probably really assess, but is it accurate? As you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of made up sources. And I mean, so that critical thinking, that almost skepticism, is also something that we need to teach kids. But then on the other hand, and I mean, I completely agree with this comment. How long do you think it's going to take for AI to really master the facts, and we actually have got proper referencing, because I mean there's going to come a time when everything is interlinked, or lots of things are interlinked, and the quality of your data and your feedback is just going to get better and better and better as time goes on.
So I don't know the question. I don't know the answer to when, because there's always, every time there's one horizon, another horizon emerges, and then more pitfalls emerge. But one thing I've definitely seen, and I couldn't agree with Luigi more, is that critical thinking is becoming the #1 human skill. And it's weird because 2 years ago, you wouldn't talk about what's the #1 human skill, but now we're talking about that more and more. What are the things that robots can't do? If a robot can create a judgment or decide better than a human, what is the #1 human skill? And let me give you an example, actually, that a neurosurgeon gave me a few years ago. I was doing a lecture at a university, and he was a neurosurgeon talking about neuroanatomy and different things. And I just said to him, what do you think about a robot taking your job? This is before ChatGPT even existed. And he said to me, let me give you an example, Rob. There was a person with a terminal brain cancer and had a tumor in the brain. If you asked the robot to decide whether to operate or not, they would tell you this person should not be operated on. Any operation is going to have a 2% success rate. You could extend the life by 6 months, but it's not going to mean anything. But he knows that patient's son is going to graduate in 2 months. So even though extending that person's life by 6 months, for almost 100% that they won't make it past 6 months, won't mean anything in the grand scheme of things, they'll be there for their son's graduation. And that's something that a human would be able to detect, versus if you put that information into an algorithm, they would say, well, your loss of life and your expectancy, it's a waste of money to extend your life by 6 months when you're guaranteed to die at that point. Yet that softer element and that critical thinking, to your point, much more important.
Okay, Rob, I know you're a busy guy. I know that there's still a lot to do. And I think, sorry, you know what? Actually, right now, we just got another question coming through. This is from the president of Roundtable Great Britain Ireland. So he says, LLM, I'm not 100% sure what that is, have shown that they can make mistakes and pull incorrect information, learn the wrong facts and figures from too small of a data set. If we were to justifiably allow kids to be exposed to AI and develop and learn, we would need to make sure that they don't become exposed to anything inappropriate or incorrect.
It's very true. And LLM stands for large language model. And essentially, it's the word that they use to say what ChatGPT is, right? It's what's the language model. And ChatGPT versions come off often what's pulled from the internet after certain date periods. So the quality of what's produced is according to the large language model, and often they've really proved that it's quite biased. It's not representative of minorities in different parts. In some ways, it can be a little bit racist or sexist. So particularly on Google's side, they're doing a lot of ethics training on their large language model. So that's really what it talks to, and that's a big caveat as well. We can't just take ChatGPT and trust it yet. No, and I don't think for the foreseeable future we can say it's 100% accurate, 100% there won't be threats. It must be supervised. And to Luigi's point he brought up earlier, critical thinking will be one of the most important mega skills that we'll use as humans to be successful in the adoption of large language models such as ChatGPT.
But I mean, that then places also a big onus on parents to actually have a look at what their kids interact with, because it is obviously a danger that there could be incorrect information, or as you mentioned, these biases and other hurtful information flowing out there. So I mean, it once again sounds like a balancing act. We want to embrace AI and machine learning, and then also pass this on to our kids, but they need to be also aware of the danger.
Definitely. And I actually, when ChatGPT was really becoming a big thing last year, I actually tested it out. I actually was on a WhatsApp chat with some friends, and I said, tell me a dirty joke about a South African. And then it told me the most stupid joke. It said, what do South Africans want to eat? They only want to eat barbecue and braai vleis and meats. And then it said, And just be warned, Rob, that any jokes are based on stereotypes and can be harmful. So be respectful. So, I mean, what's to say children can explore anything that comes into their head using that platform? But there are different things being put into place that that safeguard that, but it shouldn't be unsupervised.
Rob, with that, I think we've come to the end of our session. A tremendous thank you from myself. And maybe afterwards, go and have a look at some of the Facebook comments and questions that came out, and I've received a couple of WhatsApps as well. People are really appreciative of your insights, and I'm actually sure that one or two guys might reach out to you privately just to get some more insights. So yeah, Rob, just once again, thank you very much. And also thank you to everyone who joined in live. It's been a session of the RTI University, and we hope to see you all again soon. With that, thank you very much. And we're going to be signing off now. Thank you.